Good morning, evening, or night, wherever you are. Welcome to WHAM Today. Take a deep breath, clear your mind, and let's drift through the whispers of today's world, one quiet thought at a time. As we wrap up Wednesday, 28th May 2025, let's see what stories are unfolding around us. China is navigating economic challenges such as a housing market downturn and high youth unemployment, making it susceptible to the effects of the ongoing trade war. In response to increasing U.S. protectionism, China is actively pursuing the creation of a new economic alliance with Southeast Asian and Middle Eastern nations, potentially establishing a prototype for an Asian Union. To overcome U.S. technology restrictions, China has unveiled a new strategy focused on achieving breakthroughs in its manufacturing. Honor, a Chinese tech company, is investing in humanoid robots as part of a substantial $10 billion artificial intelligence initiative. As an alternative to the World Bank, China's financial institution is planning to establish offices in both Singapore and Hong Kong. The Chinese Finance Ministry will issue 68 billion yuan in treasury bonds in Hong Kong throughout the year. China and South Africa are collaborating to promote cross-border investment opportunities within their respective bond markets. China's dominance in rare earth minerals is facing a challenge from Western recycling initiatives, although these efforts are currently inadequate to diminish China's control over the global supply. European businesses are reporting record low levels of optimism regarding growth and profitability in China, citing economic downturns and geopolitical tensions, and are advocating for the full implementation of measures designed to improve the business environment. Tesla's brand appeal is diminishing due to CEO Elon Musk's political involvement, presenting opportunities for Chinese competitors such as Brewed and Xiaomi. Chinese and EU semiconductor companies are convening to enhance supply chain security, citing bullying tactics employed by the United States. Turning to the United States, President Trump's imposition of global tariffs has inadvertently encouraged efforts to evade them, resulting in a surge in trade crime. Some U.S. companies allege that the government is inadequately prepared to address this issue. The U.S. trade policies are viewed by some as bullying, which is fostering collaborations like the meeting between Chinese and EU semiconductor firms aimed at bolstering supply chain security. In the European Union, businesses are expressing increasing pessimism about growth and profitability in China, primarily due to economic challenges and geopolitical tensions. Furthermore, EU semiconductor firms are collaborating with their Chinese counterparts to reinforce supply chain security in response to perceived bullying by the United States. Western nations are also attempting to recycle rare earth minerals in an effort to reduce their reliance on China's mineral supply. But these efforts are currently insufficient. India's stock market faced a setback, with the Sensex closing at 18,1312.32, down 239 points, 0.29%, and the Nifty 50 ending at 24,750.45. A decrease of 74 points, 0.3%. On Wednesday, 97 stocks achieved 52-week highs, while 31 hit lows. Analysts believe economic indicators could stabilize the market. Motilal Oswal Private Wealth suggests lump sum investments in large cap, flexi cap, and hybrid funds and advises a staggered approach for mid and small caps, citing improving corporate earnings and macroeconomic stability. The National Stock Exchange of India, NSE, is experiencing a surge in valuation, increasing by 60% to $58 billion prior to its IPO approval. NSE Academy is partnering with EMA, USA, to advance management accounting education in India. Granules India reported a 17% rise in net profit for Q4, even though EBITDA slipped, and the board recommended a final dividend for 525. BAT is preparing to sell a $1.40 billion stake in ITSI an Indian company through a block deal. The Finance Ministry expects a trade treaty between India and the US to boost exports. India aims for a $44 billion space market, which could benefit 4 specific stocks. iPhone shipments from India to the US increased by 76% in April year-on-year, according to estimates from a technology market analyst firm. Turning to the United States, the country is engaged in trade talks with India, where India is proposing substantial tariff reductions on US goods to facilitate a trade agreement. Shipments of iPhones from India to the US increased 76% in April year-on-year, estimates from a technology market analyst firm shows. Russia is facing calls from US Republicans to new sanctions, following its intensified attacks on Ukraine. UniCredit's Russian division is drawing interest from companies based in the UAE. Fuel exports from Russia have reached a 3-month peak, driven by diesel and fuel oil. Finance Minister Anton Siluanov is considering adjustments to the oil price budget rule. President Vladimir Putin has expressed the need to curtail Western tech companies still operating in Russia. The Russian central bank is cautioning about oil price vulnerabilities while maintaining high interest rates. Despite a cooling war economy, Russians feel wealthier. Metals magnate Vladimir Putin has obtained a minority stake in Yandex, often called Russia's Google. Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov proposed Istanbul as a location for further peace talks with Ukraine, and Russia plans to announce the date for these talks shortly, even as Russia accuses Ukraine of trying to undermine such negotiations. Russia claims to have intercepted 112 Ukrainian drones, disrupting operations at Moscow airports. Former US President Donald Trump stated that Putin is playing with fire as Russia captures Ukrainian border villages and advances within Ukraine, amid reports that Russia is mobilizing 40,000 to 45,000 troops each month. Meanwhile, Ukraine will partner with Germany to manufacture long-range missiles to support its defense against Russia. President Zelensky reports that Ukraine is mobilizing 25,000 to 27,000 troops monthly. Japan is grappling with escalating fiscal pressures due to increasing debt. A recent 40-year government bond auction experienced its weakest demand since July. This raises concerns about potential capital repatriation if Japanese government bond yields rise. The government has promised flexible fiscal measures in forthcoming policy directives to mitigate tariff impacts, particularly from the US. Japan will allocate $630 billion to support businesses and consumers affected by rising prices and government debt. Lawmakers have given their approval. As part of trade negotiations, Japan has proposed purchasing US chip products to ease tensions. Nippon is poised to finalize its acquisition of US steel for $55 per share, following approval from former President Trump, who views the deal as collaborative. Historically, South Korea and Japan formalized a Korea-Japan agreement in Tokyo. On June 22, 1965, European companies are facing headwinds in China, prompting cost-cutting measures and investment reductions amid a slowing economy and fierce competition. Market share losses, especially to Chinese automakers, contribute to declining optimism. An annual survey highlights record lows in confidence among European businesses operating in China, citing slower growth and geopolitical concerns. Corporate profits in Europe are anticipated to increase by 2.4% in the first quarter, bolstered by the defense sector and delayed tariffs. European shares are experiencing gains, positively influencing market sentiment. Denmark is set to raise the retirement age to 70 starting in 2040, sparking worries about similar pension reforms throughout Europe. New European cryptocurrency regulations are under fire from industry leaders, who fear the rules could inadvertently facilitate kidnapping. They are advocating for revisions and enhanced security protocols in response to recent violent abductions targeting French crypto executives. Saudi Arabia is strategically positioning itself as a key participant in the worldwide AI sector, seeking to broaden collaborations with China and Southeast Asia, pinpointing numerous potential partnerships extending beyond artificial intelligence. In financial updates, the Saudi stock market is on track to be the world's poorest performing market in May due to falling oil prices. The Saudi index closed at its lowest level since early April. The nation intends to decrease its July oil costs for Asia. Saudi Aramco is preparing to issue bonds worth at least $500 million. The Saudi Arabian Monetary Authority, SAMA, stated that weekly point-of-sale spending remained above $3 billion, driven by a rise in clothing sales. The investment landscape in the ASA region is growing, supported by a $1.06 billion investment, which brings total investments to over $6 billion. New directives have been endorsed for sustainable debt instruments. Fintech company Quashia finalized a $19.80 million funding round to grow into Saudi Arabia. An autonomous driving firm WHAM intends to broaden its autonomous mobility operations within the country. Regarding workforce development, the Bahrain Institute of Banking and Finance, BABF, and the Financial Academy have created a strategic alliance to cultivate human capital within the Saudi insurance industry. Australia's economy presented a complex picture. Consumer prices exceeded expectations in April, with core inflation seeing a slight increase. Despite this, rate cuts are still on the table. Initial enthusiasm over the news briefly lifted Australian shares, but gains diminished as the inflation data tempered market sentiment. Uranium stocks saw a surge following developments related to Trump's nuclear policy. The Australian Competition and Consumer Commission, ACC, is focusing on Rare Group's subscription offerings. Moreover, the Australian government is pursuing legal action against a former director of Blockchain Global for duty violations. Australian Vintage forecasts a cash outflow, underscoring the ongoing difficulties in the Australian wine industry. A new super tax is planned to capture frank dividends. The ASB, MASB, and CPA Australia have jointly issued a report detailing current accounting challenges. New Zealand's market also showed positive movement, adding to the broader regional economic context. Turning to China, the discount e-commerce giant PDD Holdings is encountering profitability headwinds. These challenges are intensified by potential impacts from Trump's trade policies, as well as growing competitive pressures within China's e-commerce sector. As a result, PDD's shares, listed on the Nasdaq, suffered a notable decline following disappointing earnings report. Ukraine's President Zelensky is in Berlin, seeking additional support during a critical period for his nation. Discussions with German Chancellor Friedrich Merz center on securing increased aid for Ukraine. Amidst the conflict, the EU and UK are pushing for a reduction in the Russia oil price cap. Kyiv and Moscow recently conducted a prisoner exchange following intensive drone and missile strikes. Massive overnight drone attacks by both sides resulted in 7 fatalities. Drones also targeted Moscow, briefly halting some flights. Germany announced that Western allies are removing range restrictions on weapons supplied to Kyiv. Reuters reported that Putin's peace demands include preventing NATO's eastward expansion and easing sanctions against Russia. Following a major drone strike launched by Moscow, former U.S. President Trump has criticized Putin. Moscow has announced a prisoner swap agreement with the U.S. subsequent to Trump's criticism. China is spearheading an effort to establish a substantial economic alliance with countries in Southeast Asia and the Middle East. This initiative is viewed by some as a possible precursor to an Asian Union intended to offset growing protectionism from the United States. Premier Li Qiang recently attended the opening of a forum connected to this plan. Meanwhile, Asian stock markets have shown varied results, impacted by Wall Street trends, US dollar volatility, and specific regional economic conditions. Early rallies in Asian stocks, mirroring gains in the S&P 500, fueled by positive US data and tech sector optimism, have been moderated by concerns like weak demand in Japanese bond auctions and fluctuating currencies against a strong dollar. Reduced trade anxieties and tariff postponements have also shaped market sentiment. Germany's legal system saw a setback for climate activism as a court rejected a Peruvian farmer's suit against RUE, an energy company, regarding climate change impacts on his property. Meanwhile, a novel social policy is being considered in Germany, suggesting a €10 monthly contribution to retirement savings accounts for young people between 6 and 18 years old. In the financial sector, Germany's DAX index achieved a record peak, fueled by positive remarks from Donald Trump concerning prospective trade discussions between the United States and the European Union. In the latest from Canada, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau faced criticism for his government's handling of foreign interference allegations in recent elections. Canada's economy also saw developments, with the Bank of Canada holding its key interest rate steady, citing concerns about inflation. Additionally, Canada is grappling with ongoing wildfires, particularly in Alberta, prompting evacuations and straining resources. Turning to France, President Emmanuel Macron is pushing for further pension reforms despite ongoing public resistance and strikes. France is also engaged in diplomatic efforts to mediate the conflict in Ukraine, advocating for a peaceful resolution. Economically, France is working to attract foreign investment and boost its manufacturing sector. South Africa's regulatory bodies coordinated with Canal and MultiChoice before greenlighting their agreement. The South African government refuted claims of favoring Elon Musk's Starlink. Tiger Brands announced a better-than-anticipated increase in profits for the first half of the year. However, the South African rand experienced a downturn, leading up to an anticipated interest rate announcement. Sanlam, a prominent South African asset management firm, invested Rs 15 crore in Sample, securing a 23% share and a position as co-promoter. President Cyril Ramaphosa indicated that Donald Trump committed to U.S. participation in the next G20 summit. Betway South Africa provided updates on its advancements, timelines, and recently established collaborations. The United States is considering demanding more golden shares to maintain control over strategic companies, highlighted by White House scrutiny of U.S. Steel's proposed sale to Nippon Steel. Meanwhile, Ford Motor is recalling approximately 1.1 million vehicles because of a software glitch affecting rear-view camera displays. In a boost to Greenland's tourism sector, new direct flights are anticipated from the United States. Syria is preparing to reopen its stock market on June 2nd, signaling an effort to revitalize its struggling economy. The economy minister has also revealed intentions to launch a new national currency. Meanwhile, the complex political landscape in Syria, especially concerning the role of President Assad, has indirectly fostered closer ties between Turkey and Saudi Arabia. These two major Sunni powers are finding common ground despite their historical complexities. Ant International is optimistic about its AI model for foreign exchange. The company believes it could revolutionize financial services. This impact could mirror OpenAI's GPT-LM. Kelvin Lee is the general manager of the Platform Tech Business Unit. Canada is navigating a period marked by what King Charles III described as unprecedented challenges. This declaration arrives amidst heightened tensions, particularly as former U.S. President Donald Trump has issued a threat regarding annexation. Economically, the Toronto Stock Exchange, TSX, anticipates a deceleration in its growth trajectory. This slowdown is primarily attributed to the ongoing trade war and its consequential impact on the Canadian economy. Furthermore, anxieties are mounting concerning the degree of U.S. investor ownership and its potential implications for Canada's future economic landscape. Shifting focus to South Korea, HYBE has divested its remaining shares in entertainment, a major competitor in the K-pop industry. The transaction amounted to $177. This move signals a significant shift in the competitive dynamics of the South Korean entertainment market. Brazil is facing scrutiny as prosecutors initiate legal proceedings against Brewed, a Chinese electric vehicle company, and its contractors amid accusations of slave-like labor practices. Simultaneously, Brazilian airline Azul has sought Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection in the United States. Colombia's financial markets are active, with the Superintendent of Finance announcing a public tender offer for Mineros shares, resulting in a trading halt on the Colombia Stock Exchange. Sun Valley Investments has also disclosed a private agreement to purchase shares. Hungary is under pressure from a majority of EU nations regarding a proposed law that could effectively prohibit Pride events, prompting calls for the government to re-evaluate the legislation. Iran has suggested a potential opening for us inspectors to access its nuclear facilities, conditional on the successful negotiation of a nuclear agreement with the International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA. Poland's economic health is in question as the country heads towards an election, with previous growth now slowing, raising concerns about its commitment to the European Union. Romania is seeing new investment as Hyper plans to acquire a stake in MAS, signaling its entrance into the Romanian retail sector. South Africa witnessed Valterra Platinum's stock market debut, following Anglo's divestment from its South African division. Spain has received a warning from the EU, advising against any actions that could hinder Bipfar's attempts to acquire Sabadell. Sri Lanka's stock market concluded trading with a 0.33% gain, despite experiencing fluctuations throughout the day. Sweden's Saab, a defense firm, has secured a naval contract, standing in contrast to the overall market downturn affecting defense stocks. Switzerland is grappling with rising inflation, leading to warnings from the nation's central bank. Greece is experiencing financial activity as UniCredit has increased its ownership stake in Alpha Bank to roughly 20%. Indonesia has expressed a willingness to normalize relations with Israel, but only if Israel recognizes Palestine. Across Europe, an investment firm with American ties is planning to privatize ArtNet through acquisition. And that's a wrap for today's news, because even headlines need a nap. Stay curious, stay kind, and let the noise fade as you find your quiet. Take care, stay awesome, and I'll see you next time on WHAM Today.